Hey there, all traders. This is Terrence Tan, the Impossible Investor, right? And I'm back with you for another video and helping you get to terms with what the market is doing right now. And right, there is no other way to put it, but the market cannot get out of its own way right now. So Trump has started a war, which we have all heard, anticipated, and we probably didn't assume that it was going to get this bad. But now that he started it, right, you know him well enough that he's not going to back down. Right, so yesterday, right, it looks like we might finally get that bounce in the market, but only to see another market whipsaw. Right now, so what happened was the market or the S&P opened up by almost 100 points and went even higher after that. Right, but very quickly, right, we started reversing and we actually closed the day negative. Right, so we closed the day almost down another 1%. Right, and in pre-markets right now, as I'm doing this video, right, we're down another 1% after. Right now, so is the market gonna finally get done with all this selling? All right, and why is the market still selling? All right, after it's done so much? I'm gonna help you understand things inside this video. All right, and all right, I'm also going to show you some of the recent trades that we actually lock out. All right, so while others are getting wiped out in this market, all right, together with me and my traders, all right, and my community, all right, we have actually locked out some pretty good gains, right, from this downside move. All right, so if you'd like to find out how you can trade this market and navigate it with some good profitability as well, all right, I welcome you to join me in one of my next introduction sessions to find out how we do this. Right now, so back to this video, which is the focus, right? So S&P is down another $8, right? Oh, sorry, the SPY stock, right, which is the ETF version of the index, right, is down by another $8, which is 1.5% lower. Right now, the significance over here is once again, right, the entire range for the day. All right, so if you look at the top corner over here, while I put my cursor on yesterday's candle, right, you would actually realize that the low of the day was 489. All right, 489. All right, and the high of the day was 525. All right, now, so if you work that out, that actually equates to a $36 range. Right now, so you might be asking, Terrence, what's a $36 range? Right now, the SPY is 1:10. All right, when it comes to the SPX index, which is the S&P 500. So a $36 range is also effectively a 360-point range. Can you imagine that? Right, and right, is that really something that is out of the normal? Right, if you consider how the market has moved over the last 2 days, then no, because the day before that we had exactly the same story. Right, but yesterday looked like what was something that was pretty calm. All right, so I'm going to take you through an intraday candle. Can you see, like, the first hour of trading, we had things looking pretty calm over here, right, until the selling started kicking off. Right, and once the selling started kicking off, all right, it couldn't get out of its own way. Right, so you look at the support of the low of the opening, all right, it basically turned resistance after that. Market did a bounce, right, it failed, right, and then it went free falling. All right, so it went free falling even lower, all right, than where we closed yesterday. All right, now, so we are now at the new lows, right? The only reprieve you can get is there was some buying just before the market closed. And can you see how crazy this is? All right, I'm on a 5-minute candle. Right, and the closing 10 minutes that we have, all right, actually saw the market went from the low of the day, which is 489, all right, and to close at 496. All right, now, so that itself, right, it's a range of over 50 points in the index. Now, prior to the current sell-off, you can't even get an index to move 50 points in a week, right? And now we're getting it all done in a day. Right, this shows you how crazy the entire market is right now. So, I don't really need to say more about it. All right, the key now is, when is the end coming near? Right, and this is where I can actually tell you the end is not going to come until, right, all the current uncertainty, right, it's actually put out of the market. All right, so the current uncertainty has all to do with trade war. All right, and the current biggest issue right now is all to do with America versus China. All right, now, so until we get some clarity, until traders can close this chapter, all right, this is an impending risk, right, that can spiral out of control. All right, and all right, this puts traders on their edge, right, which means they're going to react to every single piece of information that's going to come out, right, and all this, right, is going to give the markets a lot of jitters. All right, but is there going to be great opportunities that we can seize, that we can take? Right, and the answer is definitely yes. All right, now, so I say this because, right, just before the prior market collapse over here, right, I actually got in on trade, right, on this stock over here, EWG. All right, I'm going to move it back to the daily charts. All right, we actually got in together with our students somewhere around here, all right, on March the 7th. Yeah, all right, on March the 7th. All right, now, so what we did over here was bought a put option. All right, so, you know, while the stock looked like it was breaking to new highs over here and even made another new high after that, all right, okay, so everyone thinks, hey, European stock market, all right, this is the German ETF, all right, is going to buck the trend, all right, against what the US stock is doing, right? So US stock is going down, maybe it's time to switch to Euro, all right, but that was not how we see it, all right, and we bought a put options on anticipation of downside, all right, now, so we finally got out of the trade last Friday, right? Why? Because of that one big final push, right, to the downside, right? Would I have known that the next 2 days is going to get worse, right? I wouldn't have known, right? But I've got out of the trade with a really, really neat profit over here, right? And I'm happy with the results. Right, now I say this because, all right, I'm going to bring it back to the screen over here, right? So these are the trades that I've executed, right? And you can see the puts over here, right? So this is the EWG $42 puts, which I bought in, right, and on March the 7th. Right, so I bought this put option for $4, right, which cost me $400 over here, right, and I actually got out, right, or like I said, let me scroll all the way to the top over here. Yes, here we are. Right, now I actually got out of the EWG $42 puts, right, on 4th of April, right, at 7:20. All right, now, so this trade just made me a $320 trade, $320 profit on a single option contract. And if you work the numbers out, that's actually an 80% return in less than a month. All right, now, so while the rest of the markets are panicking out on Friday, right, together with my students, we were actually closing out profits, right? And prior to that, right, we have also had, right, a lot of other profitable trades as well, right? Why? Right, because the biggest fall, right, amidst this entire market collapse, right, it's actually none other, right, than the Nasdaq itself. Why? Because big tech over here, right, has finally gotten slammed down, right? And if you look at this trade on my screen over here, right, on 21st of March, right, on 21st of March, I actually bought a put spread, right, on the QQQ, right? Now, so if you don't really understand the dynamics or the complications of these strategies, right, you don't have to worry about it right now, okay? Because this is what I'll teach my students, right? And then they'll continuously trade on a weekly basis together with me, right, to master all these different strategies, right? So you will be able to do so as well, right, if this video and whatever I share starts to pique your interest in trading alongside with us, right? Now, so I bought a put option over here, right, in the form of a put spread with a limited risk involved, right? And I paid $1.40, right, for a $5 spread. So what this means is, right, the maximum profit I can make out of this put spread is $5, the difference between the strikes, right? And I'm paying $1.40, right, for that downside bet, right? Now, and what I did over here on the 5th of April, right, the 5th of April here, what I did was I actually closed, right? If you look at this over here, I actually closed my original put spread, all right, and I reopened a new one, right, with a strike that is further down. So what am I telling over here is that I expect more downside in the QQQ, right? So I expect the QQQ to actually fall even lower, right? Which is why I closed the one that I had because it's already achieved the maximum available profits. So if you look at QQQ, it's now 416, right? And my strike was 460. All right, so you can see I've achieved and pulled out the maximum profitability out of it, but I still expect a lot more downside. So what I did was I closed this out, right, and I move it into a new put spread. And can you see what the order did? Right, out of this order over here, I actually pulled out a $2 credit. So I paid $140 to start this entire downside trade, right? And I got out of it, right, and I still have the luxury of a new put spread, right? And can you see the difference? I've already netted out a 60-cent profit out of this trade. So even if the market reverses from here, right, I still have a profit to show, right, for this entire sequence itself, right? I have a $60 profit right now. But, right, if the market continues to fall, right, and I manage to close this 395 and 390, right, put spread, which expires on May 30th, all right, let's have a look at it, okay? Now, so how much is it worth right now? All right, so I'm going to pull it over here and I'm going to show it to you. All right, so if I close this trade right now, I'll be buying this and I'll be selling this. All right, can you see, right, this put spread right now is worth another $1.43. right? So adding on top of the 60 cents that I've already pocketed, right, I have a $2 profit right now, right, that I can show for. But if it continues to go down, right, I can actually continue to make more from that. Right now, so we are well prepared, right, amidst this market downside, right? Why? Because I also did a trade on Costco, right? No, not Cisco, but Costco, right? Where, right, I did another downside trade. I bought another put spread over here for 222, right, and actually closed it on 5th of April over here, just 4 days later, right, for roughly about 30% profit, right? So a 30% profit in just a 4 days trade, right? And we got in on this position just before the prior, right, of the market collapse. Right now, so what I'm trying to show you over here is that, rather than worry about what the market is doing right now, right, you need to recognize that only when we have these kind of market corrections, right, when we get the market fearing everyone out, right, this is when the next golden opportunity of returns can actually come. All right, how many of you actually remember you have been craving for these kind of market corrections for the longest time ever, and it never came? And now that it's finally here, and you don't like it too. Don't you see the irony in that? Right? So I need all of you to start transforming your mindsets, right, and look for opportunities amidst the chaos right now. So is this the right time to get in? Right? Not exactly the best. But right, when the market starts to present those opportunities, would you love to be able to receive all the great trade informations and trading opportunities that's going to occur in the marketplace itself? Right now, so I hope this video helps you put into perspective, all right, what's going on, what's happening right now in the markets, right? And all right, I need you to understand this: the market is going to bounce. Right now, it's going to take time, but the market is going to bounce. Right, it's always going to get better. All right, now it just needs to get the worst out first. Right, so stay calm, keep breathing, and I'll see you in my next video or in my next introduction session. All right, so this is Terrence Tan, the Impossible Investor. All right, and I hope you enjoyed this video and the contents inside it, and I'll see you in my next one. All right, bye for now, everybody. Have a great trading day.